We got a lot to get to today, but we're going to start off light, as you may have noticed. Starting off light, Jerry Seinfeld, Unfrosted, has worst debut of any Netflix number one this year. It's actually any Netflix number one since they started tracking the individual view counts in June of last year. So it's actually the worst number one debut in a year. This is from Forbes. The top line: comedian Jerry Seinfeld forayed into writing and for the first time directing a feature film with the release of a critically panned Pop-Tarts origin story film on Netflix that debuted at the top of the streamers charts this week, but it was also Netflix's least watched number one film of the year so far. Unfrosted, starring Seinfeld and Melissa McCarthy, dropped on Netflix on Friday and wrapped up 7.1 million views between April 29th and May 5th. That is quite low compared to the average. The number one spot is a coveted one for films on Netflix, particularly in their debut week. But 7.1 million is the lowest number of plays received on a number one movie so far this year. And Unfrosted fell below the low opening week for Heart of the Hunter, which had 10.9 million views. I never even heard of that, Heart of the Hunter.
Nor have I.
And it fell way below, almost 4 million below a movie no one's ever heard of. On average, films in the number one spot have received 21.1 million views, with Netflix original Damsel in the top slot for number one this year by notching 50.8 million watches in its second week, while Kevin Hart's heist film Lift scored 32.8 million in early January. So 7.1 is quite low. 39%, the big number. That's Rotten Tomatoes' critic score of Unfrosted. The film has been praised for its 1960s period detail and standout cast. Other members include Max Greenfield, Hugh Grant, and Amy Schumer. But it was mostly panned as distressingly laugh-free, childishly silly, and junk cinema. Richard Roper says, if there was a thing called the IMDb Witness Protection Program whereby you could get your name taken off the credits of a particular project, this would be that project.
Cold.
Ann Brodel says, meh. And Vincent Mancini says, Jerry Seinfeld's directorial debut feels more like a movie Kenny Bania would have made. That's a good joke. I like that joke. So one thing that you notice Forbes did give it some credit for, and some other critics have, is its production design. It's very bright and colorful. I actually watched a little of it in preparation for this segment. And yeah, not good. Believe me, not good. But Jerry Seinfeld gave an interview at a red carpet event for The Hollywood Reporter. They will copyright claim us if we play the video, but we can play the audio from that interview. So here's Jerry describing both the art direction of this masterpiece film of his and the inspiration for the idea.
I loved the color in the movie. Is that a choice you made while you were, doing the set design and the art direction for the movie?
Oh yes, very much so. And I love when you decide, wherever you are in your house, and you go, you know what? I'm going to have some cereal. So you go to the kitchen, you go to the cupboard, you open the door, and the first thing you see is those colorful boxes. So I want the movie to feel like that exciting feeling of colorful boxes.
Brilliant art direction.
You know what really inspired me? When I was 40, my 17-year-old girlfriend loved Pop-Tarts.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Her parents were fans, so they didn't mind me bagging their daughter and then eating Pop-Tarts for breakfast right at their living room table.
His Porsche, he's famous for having a converted apartment house full of Porsche cars. So, he's got a class privilege that he's blind to. I got to tell you, the collection of cereal boxes, that's an indication of a class privilege of a kind too. And let me put this as a poll to the audience. When I buy cereal, I buy one box at a time and go through it. I don't who keeps 10 cereal boxes in their cabinet. Who opens the cupboard and sees an array of bright, colorful cereal boxes? I buy one. When I get to the end of it, I go to the store. I buy another. I have one at a time. That's what's exciting about picking out the cereal. What do I want? Chocolate this week. I want cinnamon this week.
I think you're reaching a little bit, Key.
You really do? How many cereal boxes do you keep in your cupboard?
Right at this moment?
Yeah.
Until I finished off the third one, I had 3. I usually have about 2 sitting around. So when I finish one, there will be another.
J-O-O.
Yeah.
Mr.
Bourgeois over here with the 3 boxes of cereal.
That's a little bit of a reach. That's a little bit of a reach.
I've never kept more than 1 box of cereal.
Mr. Fancy Pants with a pair of sneakers and a pair of shoes.
And a pair of shoes. I have 1 pair of sneakers at a time.
A little Lord Fauntleroy over here has
this guy
more
has
than
10
one
boxes
set
of cereal. I open
gear.
it up and there's a buffet of cereal in my cupboard. Yeah. Bougie. Exactly, Saul. Saul in the chat says bougie. That's the art direction. Here is the inspiration for the movie.
It definitely does. And you said you've loved Pop-Tart since you were a kid, but at what point did you start developing this idea into a feature film?
It wasn't my idea. It was Spike Feresten's idea to make a movie about the Pop-Tart. I thought he was kidding. But
He probably was. I'm almost certain that he was. And then what happens?
When the COVID happened and we had nothing to do, he said, "Why don't we really do that movie?" I went, "It's not a movie. You can't make a movie about a Pop-Tart. What's it about?" And then Andy Robin, one of our other writers, said, "Why don't we make a movie like The Right Stuff, only with cereal?" And that's when I went, "Oh, yeah, that's a good idea."
No, it's not a good idea. You should have stuck with your first instinct, pal. Always trust your first instincts. You're Jerry Seinfeld. Your instincts got you where you are.
Okay, in all seriousness, I'll say this. Hitchcock once said, and I think he was right, when an artist is painting a picture of apples, it's not what he's painting, it's the manner in which he paints it. Yeah, man. I mean, Tim Burton in his prime probably could have made that movie work. But Seinfeld, as we were discussing offline, has never been all that great in this forum, in this dramatic storytelling forum or comedic storytelling forum, without Larry David. Yeah, he's a good joke writer, but if you look at what happened to Seinfeld after Larry David left, it just completely tanked. Like, I stopped watching it. It's the very first episode of Just Jerry Seinfeld. They did some kind of fast motion comedy. It just turned to total shit. Like they started doing a lot of shtick.
It was a lot of shtick. It got a little more cartoonish. Although I have to say, the first episode back, like I actually, as a Seinfeld fanatic, I think Larry left enough of an impression on Jerry where those last 2 seasons were certainly not the same as the first 7. But I still think they were on balance quite good. And the first episode of season 8.
We disagree, Gene.
Yeah, well, that's fine. After season 7, Larry's last episode where they killed Susan, the woman that George was going to marry, and they got all this shit for that. How could you do that? We thought they would just break up in some funny way. You actually kill her off. They got all this shit for that. And then the first episode where Jerry's running the show himself, George gets roped into that foundation in her memory, even though he's not getting any of her money that he would have married into. He's relieved to be free of the marital commitment. Now he has to head up this foundation, and everybody in the foundation assumes that he's grief-stricken and happy to honor her memory. Really, he just wants out. Like, that's very Larry. That's Larry's ethos.
Sure.
So I do think he made enough of an impression to make the show work, even without him there. But there's no doubt, I mean, like the Frogger episode, they did a lot of shtick, a lot of cartoonish over-the-top stuff. Whereas the first seasons were very grounded.
Different.
Yes.
It was palpably different and not for the better. So it's not surprising that not only Jerry Seinfeld without Larry David, but Jerry Seinfeld, 25 years on?
In much more severe times. Like, part of what makes Seinfeld work is that the world was relatively low risk,
right? Sure,
during those times.
It was the end of history period. It was that period between the collapse of the Soviet Union and 9/11,
exactly.
where you could do a show about nothing, about manners. You could just do this comedy of manners about not being able to get your soup.
Examination of human interaction worked really well then, because there was really nothing else much going on that really captured the zeitgeist in terms of like world affairs. But you're right. I always thought of Larry and Jerry as the like Lennon and McCartney of TV. You know, they're two individual people, very talented, very good. When they come together, it's just magic. It's this transcendent, once-in-a-lifetime thing. And just like Lennon and McCartney, you had a philosopher and then you had a craftsman. Like Larry was the John Lennon. He was the philosopher of the two. It was his neurosis, his social anxiety, his obsessive, focus on the detail and minutia of every human situation, combined with Jerry, who was like a consummate joke writer. He was great at timing, great at crafting each line of dialogue, a setup, punchline, perfectly done. Just like Paul was the perfect songwriter. I mean, he could craft a hook as well, if not better than anybody.
They were the Dostoevsky and Tolstoy
exactly
of sitcoms.
And then you notice when the Beatles broke up, Lennon's stuff, in my opinion, was far better than McCartney's solo stuff. Wings was kind of, it was jingly. The McCartney solo stuff, it's good, it's well done, but it's jingly. Band it's like
none of
whereas Lennon, you had Instant Karma, you had Imagine, you had Working Class Hero, you actually had like really, I think, good deep music. And here too, Larry's solo career was Curb. Curb is a really good show, not as good as Seinfeld. Curb had like 4 seasons of greatness before it became a good show, not a great show, but still really solid, far better than anything Jerry's done on his own.
Yeah, and McCartney, really the test of music is the test of time. Who the hell listens to Band on the Run?
Right. Exactly.
Who listens to that?
Right.
The only McCartney solo thing that is in the rotation is this Christmas song, because it's Christmas.
Right.
That's it. You'll hear that song in November and December. That's it.
Yeah, Live and Let Die a little bit because of the Bond thing,
bit,
but that's more like novelty, right? So yeah, not good reviews for the Jerry Seinfeld Unfrosted film, which is just desserts. Boom, psh. How's that for a dad joke in the morning? Just desserts.
Wow. Oh wow! I can't believe you even did that to people.
For the modern day Zionist Jerry Seinfeld.
Please clap.